All right, here with us now, we're going to welcome to the show retired U.S. Army Lieutenant General Karen Gibson. She is also a former Director of Intelligence for U.S. Central Command. An honor to have you today. Thank you for joining.
Thank you. Thank you. It's an honor to be here.
So how do these back and forth attacks between the United States and Iran threaten the negotiations to end this war?
Well, first, let's go back to the strike that started this latest escalatory tit for tat.
Okay.
And that would be Thursday's strike by Iran, unprovoked, against a commercial vessel transiting the strait in accordance with international maritime law. I mean, clearly that was a violation. And I think that demonstrates or should put to bed any misconceptions that Iran has approached these negotiations in a spirit of good faith. So we talk about a threat to the negotiations, but this in itself makes the negotiations themselves exceptionally difficult, not just the level of distrust between the United States and Iran, but again, demonstrations that they are not approaching this in a spirit of goodwill. And as we've just heard from, I believe it was the Kuwaiti foreign minister, this continued unprovoked aggression by Iran. I think our strikes in return have been very calibrated and directed at things that can pose a risk or damage to vessels in the strait.
Right.
Their attacks and counterattacks are not.
Well, and what people who have been critical of the MOU have said about what happened even on Thursday is just how bold this was for Iran to even do that when they've got a deal that some have said is too favorable for them in the first place, and that they're doing this, you know, out of turn, obviously. But Ibrahim Azizi has said that he believes that they're in control of the strait and they're going to take military action. This is not a violation of the ceasefire. This is just them taking care of their strait, which obviously President Trump and his administration and other global leaders don't think it's their strait to be doing that with. But how does that complicate things?
Yes, certainly. So I think that their strike, the one on Thursday, was potentially, I don't think they necessarily intended it to lead to this escalatory round of strikes. Neither the United States nor Iran wants to return to full-scale war. Both would prefer to settle this through negotiations that were favorable to them. And I think when they initially did this strike, which was directed against a Singaporean flagged vessel, I think their thought was to assert and demonstrate their control of the strait without provoking counterstrike by the U.S. I think they miscalculated, assuming on their part that if there were no casualties and it wasn't a U.S. vessel, that we wouldn't necessarily strike back, and they got that wrong. But certainly they've made very clear that it is their intent moving forward that they will play a key role in controlling the vessels that transit through the strait.
Yeah, well, it would have been hard to think President Trump and Secretary of War Hegseth would sit on their hands with that military action. President Trump out with strong words for Iran this morning, writing on Truth Social. If we can take a look at that, he says, in part, there may come a point when we are no longer able to be reasonable and will be forced to militarily complete the job that we very successfully started. If that happens, the Islamic Republic of Iran will no longer exist. What does that say to you?
Well, I think it's a bit of hyperbole, to be honest. I mean, it reminds me of the earlier comments that came from the administration in April about destroying Iranian civilization or destroying every bridge in Iran. It's a bit maximalist. And I think we have to be careful when either the Iranian government officials or our own are speaking. And remember, they are speaking to calm markets, to influence public opinion, and to shape their adversaries' view. It is not necessarily a literal military order. I think as successful and as professional and competent and precise and lethal as U.S. Central Command strikes have been, we've not eliminated the entirety of their missile and drone capacity. And frankly, total elimination of that is extremely difficult. So I think we talk about what this does and how it frustrates the negotiations, but more imminently, it continues to frustrate a return to normal commerce and navigation in the Gulf and a calm environment for our Gulf allies to return to a normal way of doing business and, having prosperous economies. This kind of exchange complicates that. And regardless of how this shakes out in the end, I think it's hard to imagine a return to commerce that doesn't have some level of risk that's associated with it, as long as the Islamic Republic is willing to take these kinds of actions against innocent commercial traffic.
Yeah, well, and hitting our allies there in Bahrain and Kuwait, firing on their neighbors, not making any friends there either. It's going to complicate things after this war does end. With trying to do business with people in the region, but elsewhere, obviously as well, which they depend on. That posting that we just mentioned from President Trump on Truth Social, it builds on a comment that he made Friday about the United States' position following Iran's attacks. Listen here.
Will they face any consequences?
Well, you'll find out.
He just said, you'll find out, and we are finding out. What more do you think we'll find out in the coming days? What should we be preparing for?
So I think our counterstrikes that followed the hit on the Singaporean vessel were intended to restore deterrence without destroying the opportunity to continue negotiations with Iran. Because remember, ultimately, this campaign began in an attempt to put a curb on Iran's nuclear ambitions. That will come, but it's not going to come until these more immediate issues regarding the Straits are resolved. And frankly, I think one of the key issues that we have here regarding the Strait is ambiguity within the MOU, which leaves it somewhat subject to interpretation. That's a risk that happens when you rush to signing things. Part of what took Obama's JCPOA or even President Reagan's START treaties so long to resolve is that there's a lot of somewhat tedious diplomatic staff work that goes behind these, where you're arguing and dissecting every word and every punctuation mark to ensure that there's a common understanding that can't be misinterpreted in what is ultimately signed. That didn't really happen with the MOU. And so this is just one area that will be subject to interpretation. And I predict a very long road ahead in trying to resolve those differences. And then, before we even get to implementation, verification, and enforcement of the provisions of the MOU. I don't think this is going to end soon.
Okay, goodness. All right, I hope you're wrong, but these escalations today are a signal potentially of what's to come. Retired Army Lieutenant General Karen Gibson, thank you for joining today.